When it comes to growing your own, one of the most popular things is tomatoes. Every year, millions of people throughout the country set out on a journey where they put little tomato plants in grow bags and pots, and they live in hope that at the end of it all they'll have the most delightful juicy tomatoes to eat with their salad. Right, so as you can see, I'm in a lovely little greenhouse and it's full of tomato plants that some of them are taller than me, and that is simply because the person who is nurturing these tomatoes is doing it right. They are being watered regularly, and most importantly of all, they're being fed regularly. So the tomatoes in this greenhouse have been fed with this Bronte organic tomato food. Now, as you know, I'm all about organic. I don't like using chemicals on my plants, and this stuff is spot on. All the ingredients are plant-based, and it's been formulated so that it's got high levels of potassium. Now, potassium is exactly what a plant needs to grow, but more importantly, potassium encourages the plant to flower. And in the case of a tomato, those flowers develop into the tomato fruit that ultimately ripen and we have in our salads. So this is exactly the right kit for the job. So what's going on in this greenhouse is just a prime example of how if you get your feeding regime right and you use the right feed, you get the best results. As you can see, these tomato plants are huge. They're taller than me. But also you'll notice they're not absolutely teeming with leaves. They're not full of foliage, and that's because the plant food hasn't encouraged them to grow lots of foliage by being high in nitrogen. It's higher in potassium, which encourages them to flower. And when you look in, there are just teeming with tomatoes all over the branches. Now, a little bit of regular maintenance also helps. So as you can see on this plant, we've got a nice tomato there just starting to plump up. There's the leaf that supports it. Now, when I say supports, that leaf takes in energy from the sun and transfers it to the tomato. But what's also happening is you're getting a side shoot here. Now, that is only going to produce more leaves for the sun and the watering to have to feed. So if I just get in there and nip that shoot out, all the energy coming in through this leaf now is going to go up and into that tomato, and that's going to get even more plumper and even more juicier and riper. So what the tomatoes in this greenhouse have got going for them is the fact that they've been watered often and they've had the right amount of water, and as a result they're looking really good. Now, one of the things you've got to do is, in my opinion, water your tomatoes every day and give them the right amount of water. That's easily said, but sometimes it's not easily done, especially if you're away for a few days. And that's where these maxi pots that the tomatoes are planted in work really well. In a normal situation, when you're around every day, you sit the pot up out of the maxi pot, and when you water the tomato, with or without tomato food, you give it a good water, and what happens is the water soaks into the compost so that it's just about at saturation point, and then any excess water that can't be soaked up by the compost just simply runs through the bottom of the pot into the tray below. So in that situation, you are giving the plant the right amount of water. Do that daily, you can't really go wrong. But if you're not around for a few days, this is where the maxi pots are really good, because you just simply twist the pot and drop it down into that saucer of water below, and off you go for a little holiday. And whilst you're away, the plant will just quietly soak up the water out of the saucer, and it will guarantee that your tomatoes stay moist and get the right amount of water. Now, you wouldn't want to leave your maxi pot in the water for more than maybe 2 or 3 days, because you'd get a situation there where the compost was actually starting to waterlog, and tomato plants don't like waterlogged compost. But they'd be fine for a few days, and you can sort of go away and have a break, safe in the knowledge that when you come back your tomatoes will be all right. So here is an example of what happens if your tomatoes aren't watered daily and fed often. These actually look like reasonably healthy tomatoes, green tomatoes that are starting to form, but if I flip them over, you'll see that the undersides don't look great. And what's happened is these tomatoes have been watered and fed, and they've started to develop nicely, but then there's been a situation where there possibly wasn't enough water, and they've tried to drink, there's nothing there, and the bottom of the fruit starts to die off. And once that damage happens, well, it's never going to recover, and you're just going to end up with grotty old fruit. Still edible, but not desirable. Top tip for you, these French marigolds growing in the Maxipot at the bottom of the tomatoes. Now, they add a bit of colour to the greenhouse, they smell amazing, but what's most important is they do a bit of pest control for you, so you don't need to worry about putting chemicals on. They're great for deterring tomato moth and whitefly. Right, so when it comes to using the Bronte organic tomato food, it's quite simple, and I'm just going to mix them up for you now. I've got a standard 4.5 litre watering can, and to go into that 4.5 litre watering can, you need 100 millilitres of the food. It comes with a measuring cap that holds 25 mils, so it's just 4 of those into your can and away you go. So I'm just going to measure that out. You can smell the stuff, it smells organic, you know, you just know that it is the right stuff. It's really earthy. So, right, so 4 of these capfuls into the can. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so just need to top that up with water now, and off we go to feed the plants. So there you go, that demonstrates how important it is to water your tomato plants daily and make sure they're well fed. Now, this Bronte organic tomato food is available at lovegardening.com, and the Maxipots that you saw in the greenhouse earlier are also available at lovegardening.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see many more videos and get 10% off your next purchase.